There are three certainties in life: death, taxes, and going to Bunnings for one thing. And somehow leaving with a barbecue, 60 meters of garden hose, a mystery plant you'll forget to water, and a sausage and bread handed to you by a local Rotary Club. At this point, Bunnings is a weekend staple, a suburban pilgrimage, a place where dads thrive, toddlers get pushed in flatbed trolleys like royalty, and relationships are tested over paint samples. But here's the twist. It wasn't always like this. Rewind to the early 90s, and Bunnings was just a small-time Western Australian outfit, mostly in the timber game, barely making ripples outside of Perth. Meanwhile, Mitre 10 was the king of the hardware hill, a national network of independently owned stores, proudly blue and orange, and firmly planted in the minds of Aussie tradies and weekend warriors. So what happened? How did a relatively obscure WA timber company become a retail juggernaut? Not just overtaking Mitre 10, but completely redefining what it meant to shop for tools in Australia. What business moves, branding genius, and sausage sizzle sorcery turned Bunnings into the colossus it is today? Bunnings began in 1886, when two entrepreneurial brothers, Arthur and Robert Bunning, set up a sawmilling business in Perth. For most of the 20th century, it was timber, timber, and more timber. It wasn't until the 1950s that Bunnings opened its first hardware store, still in Western Australia. And for decades, that's where they stayed. Local, niche, relatively unknown outside their state. Meanwhile, over on the eastern seaboard, Mitre 10 was thriving. Formed in 1959, it was a cooperative of independent hardware stores, a decentralized model that worked brilliantly for the time. At its peak, Mitre 10 had over 700 stores and strong brand loyalty. They were the default for tradies and home DIYers. But decentralization is a double-edged spanner. 1994 was the year that everything changed for Bunnings, as Bunnings is acquired by WESFARMERS, one of Australia's largest conglomerates, and suddenly it goes from suburban underdog to corporate-backed juggernaut. Now armed with serious capital, Bunnings kicks off a national expansion strategy so aggressive you'd think they were planning a hardware-themed coup d'etat. The crown jewel? Bunnings Warehouse, introduced in the mid-90s. These were massive warehouse format stores inspired by Home Depot in the US. Instead of cozy, cramped aisles, customers got aircraft hangar-sized stores filled with every tool, tile, and tap imaginable, plus playgrounds, plants, and occasionally Christmas decorations in September. Because nothing says decking timber like a plastic Santa riding a lawnmower. While Bunnings was busy rolling out mega warehouses the size of airport hangars and slowly turning itself into a weekend destination complete with sausage sizzles, Mitre 10 stuck to its guns. And those guns, they were small format stores. Charming, maybe, but outdated. Built on a decades-old owner-operator model that worked great in the post-war years, but by the late 90s. It felt less strategic and more stuck in the past. Here's the problem. Mitre 10 wasn't really one company. It was a loose federation of independent stores, each doing their own thing, their own pricing, their own look, their own supply chains. Great for local flavor, terrible for consistency. Prices changed from one suburb to the next. Some stores looked sleek and modern. Others looked like time capsules from the Cold War. And the supply chain? Fragmented. Meaning higher costs, lower margins, and empty shelves. Meanwhile, customers were starting to expect something very different. Reliability. Everyday low prices. And the convenience of everything under one roof. Mitre 10 started feeling less like a hardware store and more like a relic. They still had brand loyalty, especially among older Aussies who remembered when it was the place to go. But Bunnings had something more powerful. The attention of millennials. And the marketing budget to own it. So who won? Come on, you already know. By the mid-2000s, Mitre 10 was offloading smaller, struggling stores, and guess who swooped in? Yep, Bunnings. Bunnings was picking through the leftovers and rebranding them as its own, a quiet confirmation of who really won the war. Bunnings didn't just sell tools, they sold an experience. The sausage sizzle became a national institution. Fundraisers out front, families strolling the aisles, kids riding the shopping trolleys like chariots. Their marketing was on point. Low-budget, approachable ads featuring real staff. No celebrities, no jingles. Just lowest prices are just the beginning, and a warehouse full of stuff you didn't know you needed. It was like IKEA for people who prefer bricks over Billy bookcases. In 2022, Roy Morgan Research put numbers behind the narrative. Bunnings scored 91.9% customer satisfaction, edging out home timber and hardware and leaving Mitre 10 somewhere down the list again. Their dominance wasn't just about branding or store size, it was operational excellence. From logistics to in-store service, Bunnings streamlined the entire shopping process. Products were always in stock, prices were low, and you could actually find someone who knew what a masonry bit was and where it lived. Maita 10 has made strides since being acquired by Metcash in 2010, shifting focus to trade customers and regional markets, but the consumer war? That front was already lost. As of now, Bunnings operates over 280 stores across Australia and New Zealand. And they don't just compete in the hardware space, they own it. With over 50% market share, Bunnings controls more of the industry than any single player arguably should. Bunnings pulls in over $17 billion a year in revenue with solid profit margins to match. It's Wesfarmers' crowned jewel, a cash-generating machine dressed in green and red signage. Now, Mitre 10, they're still in the game, kind of. Since being acquired by Metcash in 2010, Mitre 10 has leaned into the trade segment, focusing on builders, contractors, and regional markets where Bunnings hasn't completely cemented its grip yet. They're surviving, in some areas even thriving, but in terms of mass market retail, Bunnings is the destination. Mitre 10 is the polite alternative you consider when Bunnings is too far or too full. Bunnings didn't just win the hardware war, they turned a mundane weekend errand into an Aussie ritual. Mitre 10 had the head start, but Bunnings had the strategy, the capital, the culture, and yeah, probably a few too many pot plants. So next time you're standing in line for a sausage outside a giant green box, know that you're not just shopping. You're participating in one of the most successful and uniquely Australian retail takeovers of all time. So, we want to know, are you a die-hard Bunnings warrior? Or do you quietly light a candle for the good old blue and orange days of Mitre 10? Let us know in the comments. We won't judge much. And if you enjoyed the trip down the hardware aisle of history, hit like, subscribe, and give that bell a solid smack, like you're testing out a sledgehammer in aisle 12. And as always, stay curious.